We have a major update on AEW All In Attendance and why the turnstile count for All Elite Wrestling All In Wembley Stadium 2024 was indeed not 50,000 as was stated by the company. We're going to talk about the numbers, the reports, what this means, and the reality of the situation regarding All In 2024's attendance. All that and much more coming up right here in this video. We're going to tell you everything you need to know. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. All right, so AEW All In 2024 live from Wembley Stadium. A massive show for AEW, regardless of what people may tell you. Tens of thousands at a wrestling show is always going to be big, but how many people were there? That is the key question. Well, as of the latest WrestleTix report, WrestleTix, of course, tracks this stuff very thoroughly, and they have a database that is like no other when it comes to professional wrestling attendance. Their latest report, and this is right after AEW All In. They have not done their final count here, but this is the latest report we have from them. Tickets distributed was 53,393. So just over 53,000 tickets distributed. It was, I should note, announced by AEW that there were over 50,000 people in attendance. That was not announced on the show, but Tony Khan did claim that in a tweet. And remember, these are not the ticket sold number. This is not the ticket or the attendance numbers. These are tickets that were distributed. So we want to be clear when we're talking about that. People will claim that, oh, well, it's just a lie or whatever. No, but it is confirmed from the actual count on the seat map from AEW All In. So we have that. And with that in mind, I do want to take a look at some numbers. These were courtesy of WrestleNomics, Brandon Thurston and company, doing some really wonderful reporting, getting the turnstile count numbers for AEW All In 2024. And here they are. So this is a comparison to the attendance and the turnstile count from last year to this year. As you can see, last year, 72,265 on the turnstile. The announced attendance was 81,035. Estimated WrestleTix tickets distributed was 83,000 last year. We go over this year. Turnstile count, 46,476, which, of course, is under that 53,000 number that we had reported from WrestleTix and the over 50,000 number that Tony Khan had claimed. Now, there's a little bit more to the WrestleNomics report that we are going to read an excerpt from in just a little bit, but I do want to say one thing before we do that. Just looking at this on the surface, one thing that becomes clear, right, is that there is a distinction between tickets distributed and the turnstile count. Now, there's two reasons for this. Number one, you are always going to have people who buy these tickets just to resell them. It is less frequent, I should add, than it is in the United States, in the UK. It is less frequent in the UK because of restrictions put on these third-party apps and restrictions put on resale. They don't necessarily want you to do that as much as you would in the States, but it does happen. So that is one reason why you would have a situation where you would have X amount of tickets distributed, but people just not being there in the turnstile count. And remember, the turnstile count is like you scan your ticket, which is how they do it at Wembley, or what have you. Now, there are situations as well, and this is the second piece of this. There are situations where people don't necessarily scan their tickets like they normally would in the turnstiles. There are situations, of course, where you have people who may be having suites, who they usually come in a different entrance, and there's a lot of suites at Wembley Stadium. It's a massive, massive, massive arena, or stadium, I should say. So there's going to be situations where you would have people who maybe did not scan in, or and then there's like a third bucket that I think is a little bit insane, but it does happen. I'm going to say, and could happen. I don't know how much of an impact. I don't think you're going to see thousands of people kind of impacted by this, but there's the other third bucket where people don't scan their tickets in, or their tickets don't scan properly, which did not seem to be something that I encountered and I saw and I witnessed and I heard when I was at Wembley this year, or they just snuck into the arena. Again, I don't think that's a large portion of these tickets, but I think what you're going to see is there may have been tickets that were distributed that either did not get purchased secondhand, and those tickets just kind of whatever, people didn't show up, or that there was some sort of disparity in the amount of people who either entered from another place where they weren't counted in that turnstile count. And remember, that turnstile count is provided by the local government there in London. Now, regarding this turnstile count and a little bit more in depth, WrestleNomics actually did write, Brandon Thurston, in WrestleNomics did write a piece about this, and here is an excerpt from that piece. The three metrics, and this is looking at that chart that we had showed earlier, the three metrics represent a consistent difference this year's compared to last year, each down by about 36%. These numbers suggest around 87% of tickets distributed end up being used for both this year's event and last year's. It seems surprising that as many as 13% of tickets sold or given away end up not being used, but that percentage is consistent with the records we obtained and reported on earlier this year related to AEW Revolution in Greensboro, where 16,118 tickets were distributed and 13,950 were used. After last year's All In, Tony Khan said the gate was over 10 million. We don't have information about the gate this year's event. That is, again, Brandon Thurston, WrestleNomics. You can read the full article linked in the description of this video, but do want to talk about that bit here. And this is something we have seen kind of across wrestling. This is not an AEW phenomenon, where when you have tickets distributed versus the actual turnstile count, and obviously the turnstile counts and that kind of stuff, is it depends on who owns the arena. The reason, for example, they have it for Greensboro is because that arena is operated by the state. There's a lot of arenas that are not, and where that's not the case, so that turnstile count, depending on local restrictions, is harder to obtain. So anyway, but there is that disparity, and I think that whether or not we want to like the main question, I should say, is why does this matter? And I think it matters for the main reason being, how does why would AEW want to say 50,000 and it's actually 46,000? I think the reality is there were probably about 50,000 people there. And I think that's a good enough thing for them to announce. I don't think that and again, this is if you count I think comps, if you count people who were, there attending the show backstage, maybe there were 50,000 people there. There's no question, right? Even if you look at that turnstile count and you add in everyone else, including everything there. WWE has done some sprinkled some magic about things like this in the past as well, where they've said we had over 100,000 people in the arena, and it's well, okay, if you count stage hands, if you count talent, if you count everyone backstage, all the concessions, yeah, sure, you had maybe close to 100. They didn't even have 101,000 at WrestleMania 32. That's kind of been confirmed. That real number is probably closer to 90,000. But regardless, I think, part of the reason we didn't get an announcement on the actual attendance during the show is because, there really wasn't a reason for them to announce it, because it's only going to fuel the fire of, well, they are down 30,000 or whatever tickets from last year. That is what people are going to say. That is the narrative that is going to be spun. And I think it's kind of stupid, if you ask me. Whether it's 46,000, whether it's 55,000, whether it's 70,000, for any wrestling company to be selling like this amount of tickets and bringing in a house like this is insane. And it speaks to the impact that they are making. WWE, when they run these big shows, they get right around 50 to 60,000 people in attendance. And there's nothing wrong with that. And comparing like year over year, like that's like a very like weird place, because then you could say the same thing. Like, well, WrestleMania 32, they had allegedly over 100,000 people there. Let's go by WWE's numbers, which have been proven to not necessarily be true. But let's go by that. Like, so WrestleMania 32, you had over 100,000 people, and then WrestleMania 33, you had what? It was like 70. I think it was like 75,000. So you dropped almost 30,000. Nobody's asking the questions there. Nobody was saying anything. I think it's an easy hustle, right? It's an easy hustle to make these claims like about AEW failing and all that kind of stuff, when in reality, again, they just had a show where they sold where they had like 46,000 people at least show up, 50,000 like that they have said showed up. That is an insane number. And you combine that with the fact that like Grand Slam, when the VIP tickets went on sale, it crashed the website for the Ticketmaster site. Again, that doesn't mean that does not to me show that there's no interest in the product. There's a difference here. There is 100% room to critique AEW for some of what's happened over the past year. I think some of the storylines of 2023, in hindsight, were not good and hurt the popularity of the company. A lot of the backstage stuff hurt the popularity of the company. There's no question that CM Punk, Tony Khan stuff hurt really bad. But then there's also the TV ratings. It's not a secret. TV ratings have been slipping. And for a while there, it was getting worrisome. Yet, when we're talking about attendance, and I think the live attendance for Dynamite and Collision specifically, that is a problem that they need to address. And I don't think they're trying, but I have not seen the gains that need to be made there being made. There is room to critique AEW for attendance. There is room to critique AEW for ratings. There's room to critique AEW for popularity, 100%. However, using All In as an example of that, I think, does not serve even that narrative. It does not serve. It's going to get people talking. I think that's the point of it. But at the end of the day, that's, if you want to focus on the negative of AEW, this is not one of them. This is a massive success. It reportedly, according to Tony Khan, was their second best performing pay-per-view as far as pay-per-view buys for the year. And for comparison, AEW Revolution was their first performing for the year. That got right around 180,000 pay-per-view buys. Compare that to Forbidden Door just a month or two ago. That pay-per-view sold 120,000 pay-per-view buys. So right in between there, it's a pretty good number if you ask me. So anyway, there's going to be a lot of discourse about this. I want to hear from you guys, though. What do you guys think about this attendance number? Does it matter to you that the attendance is either high or low? Do you just want to see good wrestling, or is that all you care about? Let me know in the comments section below. Also, be sure to smash that like button if you haven't already done so. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.